All right, everyone. So today we are going to be making some very simple pillows, and this is a tutorial that I did in class with some beginner students. So the only thing you're going to need for this project is 2 pieces of fabric that you would like to have as your pillow. I am using right now some flannel. This is going to be a toddler pillow, and the 2 pieces are already cut out, but they measure, just so that you know, approximately 18.5 inches wide, okay, by 12 inches. Okay, so just so that you know. So the only thing you're going to need for this project are 2 pieces of fabric, any size or shape you want, because you can do square pillows, you can do rectangular, if that makes you happy. Okay, you need a coordinating thread. So in this case, I'm just going with the simple beige. Okay, and of course you should have already had your scissors because you would have cut your fabric. If you didn't cut your fabric already, choose any fabric you would like, and then cut them according to whatever size you would like. Okay, all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put these fabrics so that they are pretty sides facing pretty sides. Now, the important thing about this, okay, and I specifically chose this pattern as I told my students when we did this in class. The important thing about this, when you're starting to do the basic pillow here, is that what you want to do is pay attention to the patterns on your fabric. You see this? So as you can see, looking at just one piece of this fabric, obviously the turtles have faces. Okay, you want to make sure that when you turn your fabrics facing each other, that your patterns are going the same way. So in this case, obviously all of the Ninja Turtles, their heads are at the top. That means when I put this second sheet of fabric on, I want to make sure that the heads are going the same way. Okay, so heads on top, meaning eyes, the face is on top, you know, and they're not upside down. Okay, because otherwise you're going to be sewing in one part of the front part of your pillow will be the correct way, and the back side, you know, will end up being upside down. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we are going to do stitches. Okay, so you're going to start at the bottom. I love that, so that when you're done, your hole for turning is at the bottom. The other reason is because you will see the stitches wherever you leave that space open. You will see that thread. It's always good to leave it on the bottom because this is the part that will sit on your bed or your sofa, wherever you decide to put your pillow. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to leave this portion here, and I am going to sew all around the edges. Let's see if you can see it. I'm going to sew all around the edges, okay, using a 1/4 inch seam. Or for my students to remember and understand, I'm basically just going to line up my walking foot with the edges and sew all the way around until I get to this point, and then I'm going to stop, okay, and leave this open. Okay, so I'm starting at the bottom with the sewing. Okay, all right, so here I go. I'm going to and I'll just show you the way that I taught my students until they learn 1/4 inch and, you know, learn the measurements where they don't need it. We are just lining up the fabric with the edge of the walking foot. Okay, I'm going to sew all the way down and around. Okay, that's simple. Okay, right, and you're going to remember to backstitch when you start. Backstitching will lock in that thread. So when you backstitch, depending on your actual sewing machine, okay, this is the backstitch button. It's basically the equivalent to tying a knot if you were hand sewing. Okay, it's going to lock in that fabric. Okay, so I backstitched, and now I am sewing. I'm sewing with a stitch of about 3.0 because 3.0 is a good amount of space in between the stitches. Okay, large enough where the stitching won't come out, but not so tiny, whereas if I needed to use the seam ripper and rip the stitches apart, that it will give me a problem. If you use 2.5 when you're measuring, it will be really difficult to lift those stitches out because with your seam ripper, because those are really tiny. Okay, this is really a 10-minute project. Okay, and I'm going to lift. I left my needle in just like I taught my students in class. I left my needle in right at the end, so I stopped about a 1/4 of an inch from the end, and what I'm going to do is lift for my walking foot to lift up, and I'm going to turn my fabric around, okay, with the needle still down in its place. That's called pivoting. I'm going to lower my walking foot again, okay, and here I am ready to begin sewing down another edge. Okay, here we go. Okay, I like to use either flannel or cotton for pillows because it's soft. It feels good. Okay, sewing, sewing, sewing down the edge, going, 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 and now I'm going to stop. My needle is down, and I'm going to pivot again. So at this point, with my needle down, I'm going to lift up the walking foot. I am going to turn the fabric. Okay, when I turn the fabric, now I'm going to lower my walking foot again so that I'm right back at the position where I started sewing before. Well, meaning the distance, staying close to my fabric on the end. Okay, see here? All right, and again, I'm just lining up this fabric with the walking foot. When you're doing basic projects like this, it's a really good way just for you to use what you have until you learn how to do measurements with your fabric. Simple project, simple project. This should take you no more than 10 minutes. Okay, I am right now sewing the very top of the pillow. Okay, remember I sewed half of the bottom, I turned it, did one side of the pillow, the shorter side. I'm now at the top. Okay, I'm going to continue sewing. And I am almost to the end again, so I'm going to be slowing down so that I can figure out where I need to turn my fabric. Slowing down, and I'm going to leave my needle inside, and for the third time, turn, okay, which is a pivot. Okay, this way you don't have to remove your fabric from underneath the needle, because otherwise then you end up getting holes in your stitching. So I am at the opposite side of the pillow now. So I did the left side already, or the right side, and now I'm at the opposite shorter end. Okay, And again, I've slowed down. I'm right at the end of the material. I'm turning for the final time. But now the trick to this is I'm at the very bottom now. I'm at the last part that needs to be sewed. So remember, we started sewing almost to the middle of the fabric over here on the bottom. See this? This was the bottom. We started sewing here. Okay, so you see that portion. We're going to leave a hole. Okay, what we want to do, just so that you can see it if you want to, I'm going to leave a hole, and that's going to be important, leaving the hole, because you need to turn your fabric the right way, but you also need to be able to stuff this with the poly fill. So a good hole, 5 inches. That's a good hole, you know, about 5 inches. Okay, big enough for your hand to stick in to be able to stuff it, but not too wide, where you'll have a lot of material seen on the outside. When you get really good at stuffing and sewing, you can make your hole smaller if you want to. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to backstitch, because backstitching locks in your stitches. Okay. Lift up your walking foot, lift up your needle, and okay. So now I'm going to put my machine to the side, and what I'm going to do is I am going to on the very ends over here on the corners, okay, I'm going to clip off these ends. It's not necessary with a pillow. However, I love to do this with all of my items because it reduces the bulk. And if you do it now, then you'll remember to do it with every project that you have. Okay, so just get in the practice of doing it. When you flip it inside out, yes, it will take away bulk. So all 4 corners, be careful that when you actually do cut them, that you do not cut the corner stitch. Okay, this is the line for the sewing right here, for the stitches right there. Okay, it meets right here. Make sure you don't cut it. Okay, otherwise you'll have a hole when you flip your fabric inside out. Okay, and last one. Great. Okay, so the reason you want to cut that because of the bulk is because look, we have here's the sewing line, as you can see. Okay, and what we want is we have this much space right here. This is our seam right here, our seam allowance. Okay, you see it? So what we want to do is make sure that all of that is not in the corner, because it will be poking out. Okay, when we go to turn the corners. Okay, so I'm going down to that little hole on the bottom. All right, here it is right here. And all I'm going to do, taking my fingers, stick my fingers in. I like to push from the corners. You can start from anywhere you want to. Okay, I'm just turning this inside out. All right, now you can use your fingers to poke out the corners in this particular project. Okay, but what I really like, and I mentioned this in my class the other day, yesterday, what I really like, now you can get some of these little wooden sticks inside of the Poly Fil bag, or they're free chopsticks at the Chinese restaurant. Okay, I use them for everything. Okay, so I stick this inside. Oh, you stick it in with the flat portion. Can you see it? So you stick it in with the flat portion, not with the pointed portion. The reason is because when you are poking your corners with smaller projects, if you stick with the pointed portion too hard, you're gonna make a hole where you the areas that you sewed. Okay, so I use the pointed portion, the flat portion, and just poke, poke, poke gently. Okay, and then I just ease along, and now I'm at the other corner. See that? Okay. Okay, so now you can choose if you want to iron your fabric right now, but honestly, what's going to happen is when you're stuffing your pillow, this will all flatten itself out. So do you really need to? No, you don't have to. So I'm going to show you what I do right now. Look how big this hole is, you know, okay? When we are done, what we're going to do is we are going to fold this over, okay? And it's going to get folded like that, really nice and neat. And then we're going to be sewing across the bottom of this. We're going to be sewing across here, okay? So right now, now there are many ways to make the pillow, like I said, but we are making the beginner pillow, the one that you're going to feel proud that, oh, I did something, okay? So take a bunch of the Poly Fil, okay? Stuff your pillow. Stuff it. Put a whole bunch, okay? So I like to take really big clumps, and I like to take really big clumps because it makes it not lumpy. But there's a way that you can solve that problem if the pillow appears lumpy. Okay, I'm pushing into the corners. Okay, pushing into the corners. You want to push into the corners because you don't want, you know, the pillow stuffed, you know, in the middle, making big clumps and then nothing in those wonderful corners. Okay, now the more Poly Fil you put in, the harder your pillow will be. So you can call it firm if you want to, but you know, meaning it depends on how hard you like your pillows, how comfortable you are. Do you like soft and squishy? If you like soft and squishy, well, feel the pillow as you are putting the Poly Fil in, okay? Don't overstuff it, okay? If you like a firmer pillow, well, put more Poly Fil, okay? All right, this Poly Fil is good because it's hypoallergenic. So, yeah, and with the really big bag, I like to get the big bag because I make a lot of pillows, okay? And it's made with recycled material. So I always get the big bag. So if you buy the little bag, just so you know, you get a pattern on the back of them. It's really cool. And if you like to make stuffed animals, or you know someone who likes stuffed animals, they have different different patterns on the back of the smaller ones. So after you empty your Poly Fil, you can cut out the back of the pattern. I mean, you can cut out the pattern that's on the back of the plastic, and you know, create a stuffed animal from that. Okay, so this is all tucked in here really well. Corners are tucked in. And now what you're going to do, see this here? So everything is stuffed in there. And now what we're going to do is close up this hole. Okay, so the reason I also like to sew leaving a 1/4 inch seam is because it makes it really easy for that fabric, for this here, to stay tucked under when I'm sewing. If you left a smaller seam allowance here, it'll be really hard if you left, if you didn't have room to turn this fabric over. Okay, so I like leaving a 1/4 inch seam because it basically folds itself, and all I have to do is close up that hole. Okay, so move that back over that side, and here we go. I'm going to place my pillow, and what I'm going to do now is basically squish down my pillow, and I'm going to put it right underneath, put the fabric directly underneath, underneath the machine. Okay. Yeah, okay. Because I'm making this for someone, I'm just grabbing a label, but otherwise you would just put it right under the machine. And so I'm going to put my label on the bottom. Okay, ready to sew right now. Okay, remember to backstitch. Okay. All right. And this is why you want to use a coordinating fabric, because again, you will see the thread on the outside. Okay. And I'll be done momentarily. I'm just repositioning my fabric. And squeezing down the Poly Fil. Okay. I'm at the end. I'm going to backstitch. That's it. And if you have any little loose threads or you know, threads from when you were sewing, this is the time to rip it. And we're all done. So labels on the bottom, and that's it. That's it. Pillow is complete. That's a simple, basic project. Okay, beginning project. All right. So let me know if you have any questions, and you know, if you have any questions about what you're doing or any of the materials that you may need. But otherwise, that's it. All right. I will see you in the next video. Okay. Bye, guys.